Welcome to the Redbird Report, your destination for the latest on the St. Louis Cardinals. Here are your hosts, BK and T-Bone.
No need for the pleasantries today. It ain't going well. That's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got the Redbird Report. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I promise we'll try to make the next, let's call it 30 minutes, T-Bone, better than whatever the number of hours is that you've consumed Cardinal baseball over the course of the last week. It's gone really poorly since the last time that we talked here on this podcast. The Cardinals are in the midst of losing 4 games in a row, 5 of their last 6, and 6 of their last 8. That pretty much represents how everything's gone. Unfortunately, the losses themselves have been more excruciating than those numbers can tell you. They lost in extra innings against Cincinnati. They were down to their final pitch, should have been able to get out of it, couldn't win that one. And then they lose another tough one against the Cincinnati Reds. And if that's not enough for you, they get walked off in Philadelphia, not once, but twice in that series. And then last night, we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon, they gave up 13 runs and lost by a final score of 13-1, in which Iván Herrera made his major league debut at first base. So yeah, they've also had a position player pitch multiple times within the last week.
But Pies looks good at it.
Sure. And they might need more of it. And that's kind of the theme of the day, T-Bone. The Cardinals have met their match. It turns out when you're in the midst of a rebuild and you trade 2 pitchers off at the trade deadline, now one of them still hasn't pitched, to be fair, in Jojo Romero, the other of which was very good for you and has since been very good for a playoff team in Dustin May, well, that kind of changes your pitching depth. And then you have, for the first time in really 2 years, an arm injury to a pitcher in Andre Pallante that places him on the injured list. And later that same day, you have another pitcher in Hunter Dobbins who goes on the injured list with an arm injury as well. Well, now you're in the midst of what is maybe the worst stretch of their season so far, T-Bone. And it's not going to get easier. It's going to get harder before it gets better. It does not sound like it's too serious with Andre Pallante, which is good because they can't afford to be without another starter for an extended period of time. But for this turn or 2 through the rotation, it's going to hinder them. They do not currently know who their starters are the next 2 days. Now, I would anticipate one of those 2 starters will be Quinn Matthews. The other is TBD, and that's a big TBD in that, I don't know if they know currently who's going to be starting that game for them. They also have Kyle Leahy on Saturday as the current announced starter. Here's the problem. He is limited to 65 pitches right now. We know that Quinn Matthews is not somebody that gets deep into games, T-Bone. So you've got Quinn Matthews who's probably going 4. You've got Kyle Leahy who's probably going 4. You've got a TBD who we don't know.
Hopefully goes 4.
That's the next 3 days of starts for the Cardinals. That's not the way that this was supposed to be going. They were in the playoff race when we last spoke. Now they're 5+ games out, and it feels like they're more likely to pick top 10 than they are to end up in the postseason. That's a lot of ways to say this thing is going downhill fast. How you feeling about it, T-Bone?
Oh, not great about it. You've fallen out of the playoff race. Like you said, a week ago, we were talking about that. And then you have the worst possible thing that could happen, which was get swept in Philadelphia and deal with pitching injuries on top of it. They lost position players. Look, that would be a significant loss for them. I mean, they have lost Mason Wynn. Everson Pereira has been put on the IL as well. You won't feel those as much as you'll feel the pitching injuries because they basically run 10 deep in pitching. And what I mean is just pitchers overall. I don't even mean, if they were on Truth Serum, they'd tell you, yes, Strzelecki, probably not a guy that's a big leaguer at this point in his career, but we had an open role for him to be our quote unquote long man in our bullpen. It's a pitching crisis, an innings crisis that they are seeing right now. And some of that is self-served based on the fact that they were sellers at the deadline. You're right. It does lead to, in rebuild, making this that much harder. But it's going to be fascinating to see how they decide to fill this. And the thing that makes it so interesting is I thought the simple answer was, hey, just go external, maybe sign a Miles Michaelis. Is it sexy? No. Will it go well? No. At least he throws 4 or 5 innings, and then it takes some of the pressure off of the bullpen to where we don't just run these guys into the ground. And it seems, based on reporting, we'll see if this changes as we're recording. It seems on the recording they're going, bullpen game, man. Bullpen game. They've got this. They won't be able to comb their hair for a week, but it is going to be a bullpen game. And that just screams disaster waiting to happen. But I guess at this point in the year, it's not the end of the world for the Cardinals, right? It's just a matter of we've got to play these games. We want to try and get through them as healthy as possible. And my guess is you're going to see a ton of bullpen turnover with some of those guys that are back there.
Yeah, I guess it depends. Like, if you're saying it's not the end of the world for their playoff hopes, it is. Like, this is the end of the world. It's over. Like, it's done. Like, this is the thing that ultimately ends your season is chasing innings. Is it the end of the world in the big picture, though? No. Like, this was always likely to be a long shot, and the fact that they were in it was the surprise. This is what most of the year was supposed to feel like. The odds makers said, hey, over-under of like 65.5 wins. Well, they're there. They're at 66 wins today. We've still got a month left of the regular season to play. They have exceeded all reasonable expectations this year as we currently sit in late August. It doesn't make it feel any better, though. You know, like, this was a team that 1 week ago was coming off of winning 2 out of 3 in Chicago. You're riding high. You had won, I think it was 5 consecutive series. The offense looks good. Joshua Baez just had that spectacular debut in Wrigley Field. And you're getting ready to play those 5 games in 4 days in Cincinnati. It's like, all right, well, I mean, it's not exactly a pitcher's park, but you've got a decent offense right now. If you win 3 out of 5, you kind of take care of business. And let's get into what this weekend's going to look like in Philadelphia. They did all of that. Everything I just said, they found a way to accomplish. And then you go to Philly and you just have back-breaking loss after back-breaking loss after back-breaking loss. And now, after game 1 against Baltimore, back home here in St. Louis, Liberatore threw up all over himself in that one. And so your bullpen, once again, didn't get a night where they could just say, all right, let's get like 3 innings. Can we just have one guy eat these innings for us? No, you can't, because Libby gets into the 5th inning and he can't record another out. It's just over, basically, as soon as it began for him. So it's frustrating. It's not fun to watch. It sucks that this is the way that it's coming to an end. And also, this was probably always the way that it was going to go because they lacked arms. They did not have the number of arms that were going to be necessary for them to realistically contend in 2026. T-Bone, do you know where the Cardinals starting rotation ranks this season in ERA for the entirety of the season? Do you know where they're at right now?
They were top 10 at one point, so I'll say they're like 10th.
They're 11th. 11th in Major League Baseball. Do you know how miraculous that is? With the arms that they've had available to them as starting pitchers this year.
Sarah, and they've carried Libby through that?
They are 11th overall in Major League Baseball. They have a better starting pitching ERA this season than the Philadelphia Phillies do. The Phillies have like 3 of the best starters in Major League Baseball. That's crazy. And so they've been outperforming so many of their expectations. And finally, they've met their match. And over this stretch of time that we're talking about here, basically going back to that start of the series against Cincinnati, they're 24th in Major League Baseball in starting pitching ERA. And you can feel that. And we're seeing the results of what it looks like when you just don't have the pitching to keep you in these games.
Yeah. And I think the first warning sign, as you said, you know, when you're in a rebuild, it's kind of expected that this occurs, you know, the whole year almost, essentially. The first warning sign of that we talked about at the time was the JoJo injury. You know, the moment JoJo went down coming out of the All-Star break, to watch them kind of scramble of, whoa, what do we do with just losing a lefty reliever, by the way, not even a starter. And that was, we don't have answers. Like, they tried Gastelum in that role. And to be fair to him, rookie coming up, tough job to ask of him to do it.
Hey, you're a right-handed pitcher going up against left-handed hitters, some of the best in Major League Baseball. Go get him, kid.
Yeah,
also, apparently he had a tell that he was tipping his pitches at the time as well. Good luck.
So, like, if that was your internal interest, that was, and we talked about at the time, the warning sign of their depth. And now that they've lost 2 pitchers, I mean, you can just see it. Again, I said at the beginning, they've run like 10 guys deep that they kind of trust on the mound. And you can't have that happen as an organization. It's not so much the ineffectiveness in terms of, you mentioned like their rotation ERA is 11th in baseball. The thing that doomed them wasn't the guys that got them to that point. It was injuries and lack of depth. The thing that we talk about when you're in a sport like baseball, 162 games, it's not the 26-man roster that ends up determining what you do on a season. It's the 40-man roster, and it's even outside of that for some organizations, and they just don't have it. I went and looked at this. if they are scrambling now and we can't figure out what the answer is because they lost 2 starters, Milwaukee has 7 pitchers on the injured list. Imagine this organization going through 7 injuries right now. I don't think they could. I don't think they would survive, and they're not surviving minus 2 starters at this point in the season. So it's their biggest issue. It's a thing that, in the long-term picture, is in theory going to be better. By the time we get to this point next year, their pitching depth should be pretty solid. When you look at the minor leagues and what they have, it was a matter of, can we get through this year without injuries? And if we do, how are we going to figure it out? And that's the stage that they're in now. How are we going to figure this out for the final 30-plus games of the season?
Yeah, they have been incredibly fortunate when it comes to the injury bug over the last couple of years. It finally hit them, and you see where this foundation just crumbles, right? They do not have the depth to be able to overcome that. I'm with you, though. In the future, this shouldn't be a problem anymore. Like, they get a free pass, in my opinion, for what's happening right now. I'm not telling you have to like it or that you have to, like, excuse it, whatever. You can hate it all you want. I'm going to give them a free pass, though, because of the situation they're in, and they forecasted this at every step of the way, that this is going to be a rebuild season, and we're hoping to get ourselves into a place for the future to where we can once again be a perennial contender. So for this year, you get the out. If this same thing happens next year at the same time in August, and they don't have the depth developed to where they're feeling comfortable going to some of these pitchers at the AAA level, there will be more questions at that point in time than there are today. But right now, this was to be expected. They also have injuries down at the minor league level, and that's part of this. Like, we talk about what's at the major league level injury-wise. TK Roby would be super helpful to have right now.
Yeah.
Richard Fitz, him being available would be really nice for them. Ishan Henderson, who was hurt at the beginning of the year and now once again is hurt, that would be a nice piece to be able to have just to give you innings, even if it was coming in a bullpen capacity. So those guys also factor into 2027 and 2028 in the depth that could emerge there. And that's to say nothing of Durangelo Sainja or what you have right now in your AA rotation, which is absolutely loaded. Liam Doyle, Tanner Franklin, Daniel Egan, those guys should be contributing by this time next year as well. So that's encouraging. If you want to look for a silver lining, there are not many. If you want to look for one, though, I'm really curious to see how they handle all of this. They could just call, nobody wants to hear it. They could call Miles Mikolas and say, hey, we need you to throw 115 pitches for us on Thursday. Are you willing and able to do that? And maybe he says yes and says, hey, I want one more last opportunity. I'll go out. I'll announce my retirement right after the game. One more opportunity to pitch at Busch Stadium. Let's see what we can do. And it probably goes poorly, but he gives them 115 pitches. Maybe it's 6 innings, right? And he just eats that day for them. And they say, thank you so much. Go our separate ways. We are now able to use our bullpen the way we want to this weekend with an off day on Monday. Maybe. Another way they could go about this, and this one to me I think would probably be more appealing for most Cardinals fans, they could use this as an opportunity to see what they have in their minor league system. Like, maybe they do a bullpen game and they say, hey, for this bullpen game, we're firing all of our bullets. Go out there, big fella. Let's see what you can give us, Caleb Ferguson. How many pitches can you throw? Hey, Ryan Fernandez, you ready for 40? Hey, Strzelecki, you remember that time you threw 3 innings for us and we're 1 out away from potentially getting the win? Let's go ahead and do that again, big boy. And you have those 3 guys give you as many innings as possible, see where you're at the end of those 3, giving you an opportunity, and then the next day, you either option or DFA all 3 of them. And then you overhaul the bullpen with, you could see what Bryson Motts can bring you up here. Find out what you've got right now down at the AAA level in Hansel Rincon and Cade Winquest. Call those guys up. See what they can do for you for the next week or so. And maybe you get the next start is Cooper Hjerpe coming up and giving you 3 to 5 innings at the major league level instead of the AAA level. There is a scenario here, T-Bone, where what a lot of Cardinals fans are hoping to see now down the stretch, which is just an overhaul of the team with a lot of the older veterans going away because it's no longer about the now, it's for the future. Maybe this presents that opportunity out of necessity for them.
Yeah, I think that is the way that they're probably going to approach this, especially if they go that route of the bullpen game, because you can't expect to go a bullpen game and then not make any changes. I mean, that would be malpractice. Even in a rebuild, that's malpractice. So I think that's kind of the approach that they're going to go. I think they're going to do what you talked about. Ferguson, see how long you can go. Fernandez, see how long you can go. Strzelecki, see how long you can go. And then you start to churn through it with those younger bullpen arms. I'll be fascinated to see if they do it all in one big swoop like you're talking about, or they do it in small little increments, because I think that'll probably be the way they try and go about it, and also try and prepare to make sure that they don't lose anything that they feel like could have helped them in the minor leagues if it were to clear waivers, right? So it'll be interesting to see how they go about it. I think I'm with you, though. I would personally want to see that if you're not going to go out and sign someone. I think that is actually the best route, is just to have a mercenary that comes in. Michaelis does his thing, goes 100 pitches, goes 4 or 5 innings, and then that can save some of those arms down the minor leagues, and then you can call them up as slowly and surely as whenever you need them. The whole bullpen game thing scares me half to death, but maybe they can plan that out to where they can make these moves.
And we should be clear on what we're saying here when it comes to hey, you call a guy for one day. It's for one day. Like, in the event that they decide to make this move, I don't think they will. It doesn't seem like they're forecasting that they're going to. But if it's Zach Littell or Miles Michaelis, those are just 2 of the names. There's Michael Lorenzen. There's other options, but these are guys that can at least give you innings at the major league level. And for Miles Michaelis, for example, like, he knows where the bathrooms are at Busch Stadium, right? Like, he understands the way to navigate a game day at Busch from the home dugout, which may not sound like a big deal, but when you're doing this for literally one day, it might help at least. They have such a need right now for innings that if you don't give them to him, you're probably putting them on your bullpen. And what I'm trying to avoid is going too much to George Soriano, Ryan Stanek, Justin Brule, Gordon Graceffo, Luis Gastelum in games where you have no chance. I don't want those guys pitching in a 6-2 or 7-2 loss. I would much rather have those guys available the next day and the day after that when you're potentially up, 4-3, 5-2 against Pittsburgh or against the Dodgers next week, right? You're setting yourself up for future games, even if, yes, it may be you're waving the white flag on this specific day against Baltimore. And that doesn't feel good on that day, but you got to play for tomorrow as much as you are for today in some of these spots. And so that's where I do think, like, pragmatically, the thing that makes the most sense is to go sign Miles Michaelis or Zach Littell. It won't feel good. It won't be fun. Honestly, if you don't want to watch the game, don't. But I do think it makes a lot of sense. If they don't go that direction, what my preferred route would be, just start Cooper Hjerpe. I'm at least curious to see what he looks like at the major league level. He's been rehabbing down at AAA. Now, the walks are an issue. It's a huge problem for him right now down at AAA. It's basically a walk-in inning. That ain't going to play super well at the major league level. But he's a lefty who's 25, almost 26 years old. He's already on the 40-man roster. His start day for AAA is the same as it would be up here at the major league level. So he's on turn. He would be ready to go for you. He is on a pitch count, probably around 75. That's not ideal. But none of this is ideal. Maybe you go with him and you piggyback in with like Bryson Motts. You go with those guys back to back. Hey, can you two give us 6 innings in total between the two of you? And that becomes our start day for the two of them. Or can you go with Josh Fleming as the backup plan for you? And between the two of you get us through 6. That to me is a far more appealing option than going with Miles Michaelis. Do you have any reservations about it, T-Bone? Because it would be, pushing Hjerpe before you would otherwise expect him to be ready to go for this level.
Yeah, that's my hesitation with it. I would find it interesting because he's such an interesting profile. Just the way he kind of delivers the baseball is kind of funky, and just to see how it would play up here with the stuff. But the only thing that scares me is, are you bringing somebody up here before they're truly ready to experience the big leagues? Because as much as we would like to say, hey, yeah, coming up here and getting a cup of coffee with the team is beneficial to help you out when you go to the offseason. Yeah, I think that's the case when you're ready, right? When you have nothing left to prove at AAA. I think he's still got plenty left to prove at AAA. I mean, you mentioned the walk issue, still kind of rehabbing as he's come back from a major injury. I just feel that I fear that they would do this more out of desperation than we think the player's ready, and we think he should be up here with the major league team. Now, if they truly believe, hey, this guy is ready, if we were healthy, we would even be having a conversation potentially about putting him in Libertor's spot or piggybacking him with Leahy, then okay, I'm fine with that. But my theory would be they do something that they've done in the past when Mo was here, which was, whoa, we got to help the major league team now. Rather than going out and signing a Michaelis or a Lorenzen, let's just call the kid up and we'll just say this is good experience for him, when you can actually really put him in a spot that he shouldn't be in when he's not ready, and he could just get clobbered within the first couple of innings. He may not even, based on the way he's kind of built up and the walk issue, he may not even be able to get you 4 if everything goes kind of sideways. So now you've got a kid that comes up here, doesn't give you innings that you really need, and you just got his teeth kicked in because he probably wasn't ready for the major leagues. That's my only hesitation with it, and that's why I prefer going outside the organization to get someone to make that start.
So my case for it would be as follows. 1, he should be ready for the majors. He's 25 years old. He'll be 26 next year. They're going to need him to contribute in some meaningful way at the major league level next year. I believe the plan should be for Cooper Hjerpe to break camp with the big league club in some capacity, whether that's as a reliever or a starter. Most likely, I believe that his progression at the major league level will resemble that of Kyle Leahy, where it's going to be bullpen first, maybe stretch out for some innings, and then eventually becomes a starting pitcher for the Cardinals if all goes well and it translates to the major league level. That's my starting point. Part 2, I don't think it's all that different for him to have a prescribed 3-4 innings, whatever it is, at the major league level compared to AAA. Now, obviously, the opposition is different. That is something that does change. But if you're going to get 75 pitches here or you're going to get 75 pitches at the AAA level, and you've already had 4 rehab starts, what are effectively rehab starts, at AAA already, I think now is a perfectly adequate time to go ahead and see what it looks like up here. And it will also teach him something. Hey, how does my stuff play right now? Where do I need to get to in order for this to work for me at the major league level? I think there's a useful nature to that as well. So I'd like to see it. I would bet against them actually doing that, but boy, would I be curious and interested in watching him at the major league level, because I love me some Cooper Hjerpe, and I'm excited that he's back, and the strikeout numbers are exciting and interesting and fun to monitor. The walks are a legitimate thing to monitor as well, though, and that's something that we've seen from Quinn Matthews, and one of the reasons why they've decided not to bring up Bryson Mott so far either.
Yeah, I don't think they will go that route. I agree with you there. Because, I mean, we're talking, as much as he is 25, and yeah, the age is starting to become a real thing for him as a quote-unquote prospect, we're talking about a guy that has 15 innings in his career at the AAA level. We're talking about a guy that has 28 innings in his career at AA. You know, it's hard to improve your stuff when you're not throwing. And that's where I just think they will look at this and say, hey, look, it's better for him to just continue to kind of build up down there in the minor leagues, continue just to throw. And I think then they will get to a point where I'm with you. I think his path to the big leagues is as a bullpen arm that maybe then converts to a starter. I don't know that they're going to try and experiment with him yet, though, at the big leagues, because I think right now it is just a, hey, welcome back. Let's go with kid gloves here, and let's stay healthy by the time we're done with the rest of the season down in the minor leagues. That's the route that I would prefer. In the way that Heime's kind of operated this year, now maybe this is unfair because it's a rebuilding year, but the way I've kind of seen Heim and Surf in the front office operate this year is not calling a guy up till we really believe he is ready and has nothing to prove.
I'm interested to see what they decide to do. We do not have any answers yet. By the time you're listening to this, they may. And so you get to hear all of what we have to say about the decision and some of the background as to why you would go a certain kind of way. And we'll certainly react to it accordingly as we find out over the coming days and weeks. Coming up on the other side, how does this season influence your view of Iván Herrera's long-term future with the Cardinals? I want to get into that coming up next here on the Redbird Report. Iván Herrera is really going through it right now, T-Bone. You look at what he's done over his last 170 at-bats. This is no longer a small sample size. It's like a third of the season. He's batting .215. His on-base percentage is below 300, and his slugging percentage is below 350. That is regardless of who's on the mound. It's regardless of what position he's playing, catching, DH, whatever. He's just not producing in any kind of way offensively. That's a problem because he doesn't really bring defensive value. So when you have Iván Herrera on the field, his best position is in the batter's box. And unfortunately for this season, well, that's not fair. Unfortunately for the second half of this season, that has no longer been the case for him. On the year, he's about 10% above league average. His OPS has dipped at this point to 735. That's for the entirety of the season. We're talking like Lars Nootbaar numbers right now. Slugging percentage below 400 for the year, OPS around 735. Like, that's what you would kind of expect out of a typical Lars Nootbaar season, and he's doing it with a low average and a high on base, just like Lars Nootbaar. Unfortunately, he doesn't add any value on the bases like Noot does. He doesn't have plus defense in the outfield like Noot did. And so overall, you're just really kind of lacking production here to sustain what he is as a player. I am one of the biggest Iván Herrera fans that you will ever see. I believe in the bat. I believe in the player. I think he's a long-term answer for the Cardinals. But this is making me a little skittish on some of those remarks. T-Bone, how has this season and his lack of production, especially over the last 2 months, influenced the way that you view his future with the Cardinals?
I find him to be an enigma for the Cardinals. And the reason I say that, I mean, I think it's twofold. I think it's one, the bat. And as much as people want to point to and say, well, yeah, but Tanner, he was 38% above league average last year. He was awesome. He was awesome in the first 2 months. How often you've seen a story in baseball where a guy suddenly just kind of loses it a little bit, right? And I'm not talking about losing it to a point where he can't hit anymore, but his value significantly changes if he's only 12% above league average as a guy that the second part of that I believe why he's an enigma, he's positionless in my opinion. And I don't know that they view him as a catcher long term. They say all the right things publicly, but we're talking about a guy that's caught one base stealer, one out of the last 2 seasons. I think he's a good game caller. You know, I think he's maybe arguably their best blocker, kind of best framer maybe behind the plate. I don't know how much framing matters anymore in a world of ABS. He's pretty good at challenging, all right? But if people can get on and just steal second base, that's a huge game changer for a pitcher, right? Imagine every walk or single basically is a double. That's hard to believe, and I think teams have started to take a little bit more advantage of that over the last couple of weeks after Colorado ran wild on him. So if he can't play catcher, and by the way, you've already got a loaded catching pipeline with Bernal, Crooks, Pages, Rodriguez, by the way, who's down in Double A, is still a catcher right now. He's not going to go to first base, in my opinion, because I'm not removing Burley from that spot. You don't have a spot in the outfield to throw him in a corner like they experimented with a couple years ago because you've got Baez and Walker, and I don't know that he can play another position on the infield. So we're talking about a DH. And if you're a DH only, 12% above league average is fine. That's not a ton of value for a team, though, right? The best DHs are like the Yordan Alvarez's of the world, the Otanis of the world, guys that do significant damage and still end up with like a 4-5 WAR because of it. I don't know what to make of his struggles. I don't know if his offensive struggles are because he's catching or if it is something's gone awry and baseball's kind of figured him out and he's kind of settling in, as you said, more in like the Lars Nootbaar role of things. And if I'm thinking long-term about the lineup, I don't know that he's hitting in your top 4 when Rodriguez gets here. You know, I think Rodriguez is probably the guy that hits too. And if that's the case, and this is more of what his profile is, I was on this show talking about how Nootbaar didn't fit as a number 5 hitter. Well, okay, if we've got right-handed Nootbaar here, that doesn't fit really in a 5 spot. I prefer more of a high average guy like he was in the past in that role. I find him to be a huge mystery. Biggest storyline for, not biggest storyline, excuse me, offensive player under the spotlight for me in the final month of this season, because I want to know what he looks like, because if you don't have an answer for him position-wise, the offense doesn't get back to where it was, he is a huge question mark for what they're going to do with him in the long term.
I don't get it. There's something here. I don't get it. And I don't know if it's opposing pitchers figuring him out. To me, that would be strange considering for multiple years and including the first 3 months of the season, he was a guy that was able to have success against whatever it was that opposing pitchers were throwing him. I don't know if this is him wearing down. It's the first season he's truly played 162 at the big league level. At every level in the minors, he was a guy that hit. Now, there were questions about his defense, less so than what they were once he got to the major league level, but he always hit. It didn't matter where he was going to hit. And basically, starting on the 4th of July and since then, he stopped. Now, this is a 45-game sample size. I could also give you a 280-game sample size up until that point in time, in which he was a 280 hitter with a 380 on base and was 35% above league average offensively. That was the first 280 games of his major league career. In that time, he was more productive over that same span than Rafael Devers, Byron Buxton, Jose Ramirez, Seiya Suzuki, Randy Rosarena, Julio Rodriguez, Cal Raleigh, Pete Alonso, Corbin Karolick. The names on this list that he was better and more productive than, it's long, man. He was one of the top about 30 hitters in all of Major League Baseball. And then it just stopped. And I can't explain why. I wish I had a better answer for you today on what exactly happened, but I don't. And so it leads me to believe this must be something about him wearing down. That's got to be what this is, right? And if it is, I would think that would show up in some of the numbers of him catching. Here's the problem. It doesn't. When you look into what are his numbers on the days that he is catching, he's hitting 280 on those days. This is for the entirety of the season, and he's slugging 400. Those are decent numbers. Now, the slugging percentage, you'd like to be higher, but overall, he just hasn't slugged the way you'd want this year. So I did some research today, T-Bone. I've got an Excel spreadsheet on my computer right now showing at-bats hits, extra base hits, strikeouts, walks, everything. What did he do? And I tracked this by hand because there's nowhere else you can find it. What did he do? Also because I'm a nerd. The day after he caught. So if you go through his game log and look into what he was able to do, not the day that he caught, but the day after he catches, what did his production look like? And T-Bone, he's a 220 hitter on those days with a 345 slugging percentage. In other words, he's basically what he's been for the last 2 months. So maybe there's something there where his body wears down, it's mentally and physically exhausting, and you take some nicks and bruises when you're behind the plate, and the next day, he's not as productive. So maybe there's something to that in terms of why he's not producing the same level. And if that is the case, it would also stand to reason, again, I'm trying to understand why we're seeing this. It would stand to reason why down the stretch of a season, when he's playing for the first time over 162 at the big league level, that his body is also wearing down, not just day after he catches, but also just in general as we get into the month of August, dog days of summer, etc. So I can tell myself that story and explain it all away. The question is this going to become a trend? Or is this just a 2026 thing while he's adjusting his body to playing a full 162? Does this mean he can't catch long term? Excuse me, I'm getting choked up thinking about this.
Hey, this is an important question.
Does this mean he can't catch long term? Or is this a situation where his body didn't catch as much last year and so he's adjusting to it? Like, these are all questions that are legitimate to be asking right now. They all play into the Cardinals' future. They have one of the best prospects in minor league baseball right now in Rainiel Rodriguez, who's crushing the ball every night that I turn on or look at a Springfield Cardinals game. So, like, all of this is in the backdrop. And meanwhile, Iván Herrera forgot how to hit at the major league level. So I don't know what to do with it. I'm still a believer in the talent. I believe this is just a 45-game blip, but the longer that it goes, the more questions that I think it deserves to be asked as we go into this offseason.
Yeah, and like I would like to believe that is kind of what's going on, because to me that's kind of explainable. And it was one of the things that I brought up as a concern about them trying to make him a catcher, was the fact that you start to deal with more of the nicks and bruises. I mean, look at that ugly inning that happened last night against Baltimore, where they gave up whatever it was, 8 runs in the inning or whatever, and he's getting drilled by foul tips in a game that doesn't matter. Yeah, but it's going to be hard to hit the next day when I just took a shot to my quad. And I've been hit like a major league leading 30 times when I'm up at the plate. Okay, that makes sense. The thing that I don't understand, and it's why I'm going to hold more firm in my, I don't know if it's criticism or questioning of what this is long-term for Herrera, they're telling us he's fine. They're telling us this isn't a workload thing. And I'm not just saying by public statements, right? Typically, there are times where in the past, teams will kind of back channel to us, hey, so-and-so's kind of feeling it. And then we can kind of make our judgments on that, right? That's just kind of an inside peek into how it kind of can go with what we're hearing sometimes. Never heard that once about Herrera. Mm-hmm. I've heard that about some pitchers. Nothing on Herrera. Not at all. Not a peep. We had heard that in the past about, Mason Wynn until they finally came public with it. Okay, well, we can kind of make our judgments on that based on knowing that he's not doing everything we've heard. This guy's fine. Not a workload issue. It is more of mechanics. It is trying to figure it out at the plate. Okay, well, I'm going to take you on that word then, Cardinals. And if that's the case, I've got some questions about this long-term for Iván Herrera. I would like to believe it is just the catching situation, and hey, maybe it is his body's adjusting to it. They're not selling that, so I'm not going to try and sell that, and I'm going to have more questions about it.
I would say this. If they are as skeptical as you are, they should trade him this offseason. Because if that's real and he's just either been figured out or it's not a wear down issue, this is not a longevity issue, this is a, hey, he's not the hitter that he showed the first, 200 games of his major league career. He's something lesser than that. And he's closer to like a league average. He is DH, first base, catcher version of Lars Nootbaar. That's what he's going to be. Good on base, hit for a little bit of average, but light slug. If that's what he's going to be in the future, they should trade him now while his value is still where it's at. If they are more on my side, though, then I think this becomes a question of how do you value that? And where does he best serve you? Because I think the corner outfield is spoken for, right? Like, I think they believe in Joshua Baez. They clearly believe in Jordan Walker. Can he be somebody that splits his time between first base and DH and maybe gives you opportunities at first against lefties and a DH against righties? Sure, is the bat going to hold up, though, to that kind of scrutiny? Because it's a higher bar to clear if you put him in there at first base /DH than it is at catcher. Do you still believe he can be a catcher? And is maybe this all kind of overstated and it's just the first of a 162? I don't know. But I think these are all questions that they should be asking internally right now. My guess is that they are asking them internally, and they should lead to some difficult decisions that are going to be made in this offseason because they've got to figure out this catcher position. That is going to be a long-term thing that they've got to look into, and it may not be Rainiel Rodriguez. Maybe the answer is Leo Bernal plus a legit true backup. Maybe it is Pedro Pages plus Leo Bernal behind the plate. How does Rainiel Rodriguez play into the third base, first base DH conversation with Iván Herrera as soon as next year? A lot of questions loom for the St. Louis Cardinals and how they're going to put this roster together. Many of them more fun questions than what we talked about in the first 15, 20 minutes of this podcast. They're exciting questions, and there's prospects on the way that will make those fun to have as we get into the offseason. Looking forward to having some more of those more positive conversations with you guys here on the Redbird Report. If you are interested in becoming a partner of the show, sponsoring the show, doing any live endorsements with us here on the show, please reach out to myself or Tanner Hendrickson. We'd love to talk to you about some of the new options that have been brought to the table. That is definitely something we can discuss with you. We'd like to do that if you reach out to us via social media. Always appreciate Noah for helping us out on the video side of things. You can check us out on the podcast feed as well, 101ESPN.com and the free 101ESPN app, or on YouTube at youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. For T-Bone, for Noah, I'm BK. We'll talk to you guys next week here on the Redbird Report.
Find every episode of the Redbird Report with Brandon Kiley and Tanner Hendrickson on YouTube or at 101ESPN.com.